Hey everybody, let's talk about startups. In particular, let's talk about how to transition from having a job to being a business owner. Okay, and by that I mean we're going to transition from working for somebody else to working for yourself. Okay, this is something that I know a lot of people on this channel have had an interest in. And maybe you have an interest in this too. Maybe this is something you've thought about for many years, but you either don't know how to go about turning it into reality, or you're apprehensive, you're fearful of doing it because perhaps you have financial commitments, you have a family possibly, and you've heard a lot of horror stories about how risky it can be, both financially and also on a personal level. And so this has caused you to not act on it, okay? Now, let's get into this, because this is a topic that I actually really enjoy. I've had years dealing with this, and I love business. I love entrepreneurship. I mentored several startups and the startup founders and led several to success. And I've seen a lot when it comes to the world of startups. I've also started my own business. So, and for what it's worth, I'm a YouTuber now. So that's I guess that sort of qualifies you in a way, the whole YouTube thing. I don't know if YouTube really qualifies as a startup technically, because it's a little bit of a special kind of thing. But yeah, so let's talk about this. Now, I want to start by dispelling a few myths that you've probably heard. On occasion, I have gone online and I've looked at a few YouTube videos and a few articles on the internet about how to start startups, and it never ceases to amaze me the amount of sheer crap and misinformation that's out there on these topics. All kinds of people that, quite frankly, don't know what they're talking about, who think they are an authority on this, and you get a lot of interesting things being put out there, and I want to try and break some of those myths. Okay. Now, as I was saying this, I kind of realized a little bit possibly how silly it sounds, because I'm giving you my opinion on it. But what makes my opinion more valid than anyone else's? Well, nothing really, other than the fact that you can hopefully go out and verify a lot of the stuff I'm telling you. I'm not asking you to take anything I say as a leap of faith. I always welcome people to go out and do your own research on stuff. And especially if you're considering starting your own business, that's definitely something you're going to need to do. Don't take anyone's word for anything. Go and find out for yourself. And the best way to find something out is by trying it. Okay. If you can minimize the risk and go and test the waters yourself, that is the best way to learn when it comes to entrepreneurship. Okay. Now, some of these myths, okay, let's get into this. Some of these are cliches. What's the first thing everybody says? Well, first thing everybody says is that you're going to have to take a huge financial risk to do this. Incorrect. Okay, some people do it that way, and you can do it that way. But do you have to do it that way? No, you don't. Incorrect. It's not required to take a huge financial success to have your own business. It just isn't, okay? And you can go out there and you can see examples of people that have started their own businesses that have not taken like this big long shot gamble to do it, okay? It's been more of a carefully measured, controlled journey, okay? And I'm not talking about people that inherit a family business. I'm talking about people that go from having a career, maybe a corporate career where you're working for a larger organization and you're a little cog in a big machine, and you transition from that to having your own business, okay? And they do it in a carefully controlled, step-by-step way that validates all the requirements as you go, and you even start to generate revenue and generate profit as you go, okay? Now, I hate using YouTube as an example, but that's probably an example that most people can relate. You guys are on YouTube, so you're obviously familiar with it. A lot of the people that that do YouTube for a living, like that's their full-time income. I'm sure if you investigate everybody's individual story that's in that situation, you'll see that they didn't one day quit their job and then say on the next day, okay, I'm going to start doing YouTube and see how it goes. That's usually not the way it goes. My gut feeling is that most YouTubers, they may have had a day job in the past, but they started doing YouTube on the side and it started to take off. They started to make a bit of money with it. And one day it just dawned on them, maybe I should quit my day job and do YouTube full time. Now, was that a huge personal and financial risk? No. Okay, so there's one example that you can hopefully easily verify, okay? You don't have to take my word for any of this. Go out and see for yourselves. So number one, you don't have to take a massive personal risk to do things. It is possible to do it in a carefully controlled, measured way where you validate all the required pieces before you cut the cord to your source of income in the form of your day job. Okay, so that's the first myth I want to bust here. Okay, it doesn't necessarily require this massive personal risk and financial risk where you risk, if you're paying a mortgage or something, you risk that. Some other myths, okay, that are, I don't know, they're propagated online. My theory is that it's done by interested parties. Okay, myth number 2 is that you have to take out a massive loan to do this. You need a ton of capital right up front to launch any business. Okay, either that comes from a personal loan, like if you go to the bank and say, I need $50,000 or whatever amount of money to start a construction company. Some people do that, or you do it the what I call the Silicon Valley ways. You go out and you find angel investors that will come in and essentially buy an interest in your company. So they, in fact, end up being partners with you in this new company. And all the legal mess that entails, where they have shares and they have a say in every decision and all this kind of stuff. But it means that you have to go out and court investors. Okay, you have to try and develop relationships with these people and all this, or you go to institutional investors. There's a lot of government programs where they give out grants and loans and things like that to people doing entrepreneurial type ventures. And the assumption is that you need to do that. You need to spend all your time learning about investment, learning about how to get investors, and then going and, learning that world and doing pitches, right? That's the thing. Everybody talks about doing pitches. You got to make presentations and, pitch the idea of your company to people and have them get on board. I have heard over 1,000 pitches from people in their 20s, whether they're students or they're actual entrepreneurs. In my life, I've sat on boards where we judge them and all this kind of stuff. You don't have to do that. This is a fallacy. Certainly you can do that if you wish, but the idea that that's what you have to do to start your own business, that's just false. And the thing that's kind of annoyed me in the past is, in your region, wherever you may be, there is likely some kind of an organization that is set up, perhaps by the government, where you are, that is tasked with encouraging and helping entrepreneurs. Okay, and that might be in the form of a startup incubator or something like that. And in my experience, those organizations just propagate this. They sort of proceed as if the only way to start a company is to first go out and try and get hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment money as a first step. That's plainly incorrect. And if you want proof of that, once again, look at people that start more traditional businesses. You're starting a construction company. I always use the example of a plumbing company, as you guys might know from my previous videos where I talk about this stuff. And if somebody wants to start a plumbing company, there's things that usually in most regions, depending on what country you're in, but usually there's some form of government grant program or loan program where you can apply for to get money, either in the sense that they give it to you like a grant, or they lend it to you like a loan. Okay. They have assistance like that, but usually when people start those type of businesses, if it's a service-based business, which means that you don't have to buy any real estate, you don't have to rent. Like if you're starting a store, you have to rent real estate. Okay, you need office space, or you need floor space, like a store, commercial space. If you're starting a service company where it's not as capital intensive, meaning you don't need as much money to start it up, then you don't necessarily have to do that. A lot of people just start it on the side, and as soon as they start to get a few customers, and as soon as those customers pay them, that signals to them, hey, this is working. This is on its way, so I'm going to maybe step back from my day job. Maybe I'm going to give notice or take a leave of absence, and then I'm going to focus on my own company, my own service business. Okay, so number two. So the number two fallacy here is that you don't need to investigate and swim around in the world of investment and the world of financial loans, and you don't need these massive amounts of money to get your own business off the ground. Okay, a lot of times I think that the people who tell us this, okay, a lot of times they themselves are interested parties. Okay, so either they're the financial institutions, or they're affiliated with the financial institutions that lend the money. And in my experience, I have witnessed firsthand a very predatory relationship that these institutions have. They view entrepreneurs as another market that they can sell loans to. So they will aggressively push loans, and they will assist all the organizations that deal with entrepreneurs, get them on board, and propagate this myth that you need to stand in line and get a ton of money in the form of a loan for you to start a business. This, of course, is bad news. Taking money for something that could be risky is bad, okay? Especially when it's not necessary. And it is not necessary. For some businesses, okay, depending on what you're trying to do, depending on what region you're in, and depending on what your goals are, that may be the way you have to go. But what I'm here to tell you is that you have complete control over what type of business you start and how you do it. Okay, that's the great thing. This is a very creative endeavor. And if you plan it right, if you think a little bit, a few steps ahead, and you plan this properly, you can set yourself up so that you can start making money without having to put as much money into it. That's called startup capital. Okay, you don't need as much. Some businesses are very capital intensive. If you wanted to start an oil refining plant, for example, an oil refining company, in order to get into that business, you need installations that cost billions of dollars. There's just no other way around it. However, that's not a good candidate for starting a business yourself. There are other types of businesses. All you need to do to make a lot of money is have a desk, a phone, and a computer. Okay, think of, I'm not suggesting you do this, but think up, we talk about HR a lot on this channel. Think about a recruiting company, for example, okay? Let's pretend that you wanted to start a company where you are a recruiter. So you provide staffing needs for businesses. Okay, the businesses, if they need employees, and they're looking for employees with certain skills, they can either hire their own HR people and make them employees of the company, and then give them the job of interviewing and selecting candidates, or they could go to an outside company, a staffing company, and say, look, I need 10 employees. They all have to have these skills. Can you find me 10 employees that are vetted? You've checked out their backgrounds. They have the skills. That's all been verified. And, give me your finalists, and I will come down and sit in on the final interviews with them. And then I will pay you for your time. Okay, that's a recruiting company. Now, when you think about it, what do you need to do that? You need a phone, you need a computer, you need a desk. Okay, and if you do need a place to interview people, you could always go to the local coffee shop and do it there, really. Is that ideal? No, but hey, it works. So that's an example of a company that's not very capital intensive. I'm sure everybody watching this video already has the tools to be able to do that kind of business if they want it, okay? You don't have to start the oil refinery business. You could start an HR staffing business, right? So that's an example. Now, if you wanted to start your own recruiting company, do you need investors to get involved? No. Do you have to make a pitch to people you don't know and try and convince them to buy in on your business? No. All you have to do is start doing it. And if you feel you know what you're doing, you feel you know a little bit about recruiting and HR, and you believe in your own abilities, try it. And if you get paying clients, that tells you something. If you can't get any paying clients, that tells you something else. So that's an example of a type of business you could start. And you don't need that investment money. Okay. There's several myths like this. Another, I don't know if this is a myth, but the myth is that you have to do this. The word hustle. I hate that word. I hate how people giving advice on how to start a business, they throw that word around. You got to hustle. Well, yes, for some businesses you do. Okay. I'm not going to dispute that. You can certainly succeed that way. But it's a myth to tell people that if you want to get anywhere, if you want to make a success of something, there's no alternative but to hustle, to sell, right? This is another example of people, how can I put this? People thinking that it's 30 years ago, they're thinking about a world before the internet, in my opinion. In the world before the internet, if you wanted to try and sell a product, the only options you had were hard. They were either expensive or they were very labor intensive. You either had to spend a lot of money on advertising to get the word out there, putting up billboards, putting up ads, things like this, or you had to pound the pavement if you're doing personal selling and things like this. The cliche of the person going door to door selling brushes and vacuum cleaners, right? That was the myth, and that if you wanted to get the message out there and try and sell, you had to do basically those types of things. And as I said, they're either expensive or time consuming. Well, one of the amazing things about the internet and about social networking is that if you want to try and reach customers, you want to get the word out there, okay? You have a window to your customers in the form of your computer and in the form of social networking, okay? You can be seen by pretty much, I don't want to say all the customers on the planet, but pretty close to it. Okay, you have the ability for free to reach all those people. All you need to do is learn where to go and what to say. And that's something that costs nothing. Okay, that's something that you can figure out on your own. It certainly doesn't cost you thousands of dollars. It might take you a bit of time if you don't know it already. But this idea that, okay, you have to sell, and that's what you're going to spend your whole time doing, that's not necessarily true either, okay? The other thing I don't like about the word hustle and how people throw it around in the context of, if you want to have your own business, you have to hustle, is that maybe this is me reading into it, but there's an element of that speaks to extroverts, okay? Some of us out there are introverts. I'm an introvert. I know a lot of people watching are introverts. For a lot of introverts, the idea of personal selling, where you go and you talk to somebody face to face and you try and sell them on your product, that's a horrifying thought. We shy away from that. There's no bigger turnoff to an introvert than having to go out and do that. Okay, it's almost like having to do cold calling. That was kind of the thing. It's kind of the thing more back in the day than it is now. But yeah, that was something that, you know, a lot of extroverted type entrepreneurs will tell you, oh, that's what you have to do. What I find interesting is that, and I'm not looking down on anyone here, but I'm just pointing out that a lot of these people haven't been to business school. Now, business school is not the be all end all. I'm not saying it is, but it's interesting because if you learn everything by experience, you basically learn what you've seen. Okay. And you tend to be an expert on what you've seen. But there are more things out there than just what you've seen. There are many ways to start a business. There's many industries out there. I can give advice on how to succeed in certain industries, but I'm not going to pretend that I can give perfect advice for every business in every situation, because there's a lot of things that I haven't seen. There's a lot of industries that I know nothing about, as I'm sure is the case for everyone watching this. We probably know a lot about one or two industries, but there's some things out there that we have absolutely no experience with. So the problem is when you give advice, which is based off what you've seen, and you're giving it as general advice, it's probably going to be hopelessly wrong and misleading for people in certain situations in certain other industries. Okay? Now, the great thing about learning business is that business talks about business in a general sense. Okay? It talks about things that you may not have seen personally. Okay? And that's the advantage. It gives you insight into situations that are outside of your experience base. It'll give you insight into those situations in a general sense. So you don't have to have experienced everything firsthand to know something about it. Once again, experience is very important. I'm not knocking it, but there's some problems that people run into when they give advice based on their experience. They tend to come to the wrong conclusions. They tend to generalize a lot of principles. The principle might have applied to them, but it doesn't apply to other people who are in a different situation. So that's the other thing. So anyway, the bottom line of all of this, okay, if you sort of break down a lot of these fallacies that I'm calling out, and once again, I'm not expecting you to take my word for any of this. All I'm expecting is that if you're serious about this, really look, okay, really look at what's going on out in the real world and see if these are true, okay? And I suspect you will find that they are true. What this means is that you can start a business. It does not mean a huge financial risk if you go about it in the right way. If you engineer a solution that doesn't require that. It also means that you can do this whether you are an extrovert or an introvert. It also means that you don't necessarily have to get involved in the world of investors and pitches, okay? Like you're on Dragon's Den, if you're familiar with that show. I don't watch that show. I watched a couple episodes many years ago and I didn't think too much of it, but I know it's very popular. And but you don't have to be in that world. That's not necessarily how it works, okay? It means that you can start something and do it your way with the tools you have. If you have a computer and a desk, okay? You don't even need the desk, really. As long as you have a computer and you have access to the internet, you have social networking, you have the potential to validate any business idea and to get interest generated in what you're doing. And then you can also do things like have people pay you in advance. So if you are doing something that's a little bit capital intensive, okay, if it requires a little bit of money to get started, you can actually get people to prepay for stuff. You know, like when you go to the store or when you order something online, you prepay. You pay them the money and then they ship you the product or whatever. It works like that. You get them to pay upfront for the service. And then if you have a few of those, that validates it. It also allows you to get started. So there is a lot to this topic. This is a huge topic. But what I'm saying is that there are ways to do this. And don't be fooled by a lot of the advice you see repeated out there. There's a lot of people, I know this for a fact because I've worked with some of these people. There's a lot of people out there that are giving advice that don't really know what they're talking about, okay? And worse than that, they are connected to interested parties that have an interest in selling you a loan or having you want to register with their organization and buy into what they're doing, their program. There's a lot of people that feed off the entrepreneur community, lawyers, accountants, this kind of thing, people that sell services, even people that sell office space or co-working space or, whatever. They have a vested interest in selling you something. So, they'll say all kinds of things and give you all kinds of impressions that may not be 100% accurate. So, and I find it kind of shameful, actually, but that's just me. Anyway, so okay, if you want to transition, there's ways of doing this. Now, I have to apologize. I don't have a well thought out script for this video. I just figured because this is my first video on startups that I've done in a long time, I'm just gonna pretty much almost talk off the top of my head. So now you know. But if you're looking to transition into your business, okay, one of the keys, okay, that I would recommend is, first of all, consider doing more of a service type business than a product type business. Okay. Products generally tend to be more capital intensive. That means you need money to get the whole operation started. You need to invest in equipment. You need to invest in materials. You might need to invest in logistics and shipping costs and things like this. That tends to be more capital intensive. If you want to start a business that has like real estate, maybe a storefront, or it has a building of some kind, a warehouse, a restaurant, anything like that, that tends to be capital intensive. Think of a business idea that doesn't require that. And even if your ambition is to have that, okay, that's what you envision, that's what you want to do, try and think of a way that you can get started, meaning you can get paying customers before you have to have a storefront or a warehouse or a restaurant or something like that. Okay. The goal is to try and make your business idea as uncapital intensive as possible, because with the least amount of money that it takes to start up, the more chances of success and the less risk you take. Okay. In fact, the first thing you should do, in my opinion, and not just mine, almost everybody will say this, is that you need to validate your idea. You need to make sure it's going to work before you pull the trigger on it. And the way to do that is to see if you can get interest. Okay, so the first thing I would work on is not operations. Hopefully you know what that means. That means creating the product or delivering the service. Instead of that, I would work on the marketing, finding who your customers are going to be, figuring out how you can contact them, figuring out what to say to them. Okay. And I don't mean like just sort of imagining this. I mean actually going out and trying it. Find a group on your favorite social networking site. Okay. See if you can post in the group. See if you can contact these people directly. Okay. Say something to them. See if it gets a response. See if they're willing to pay for something up front. Okay. It might be as simple as one post where you just post and you say, I'm here, I've got this thing. If you're interested, do this. Either contact me or click this link, or, here's the checkout, pay for this, or whatever, right? Some indicator that they're interested. Okay. So do this. And if nobody does it, that tells you something. If a bunch of people do it, a bunch of people, are holding out their money or saying, here, take my money. I'm interested. I want that thing. Okay. That tells you something else. Then you have an easier problem, which is you just have to make that thing happen. Okay. Usually getting the customers is harder than making the thing. Okay. If you decide to, let's say you're I don't know. I'm trying to make up examples off the top of my head. Maybe you can deliver a service. You can fix equipment. You can, I don't know, do something. You can write articles. You can proofread resumes. You can, like, I don't know, some kind of service. You probably have those skills to begin with. It's just a matter of turning those skills into a business. So getting the customers is the hard part. Once you have people lined up saying, here, fix my equipment. Here, rewrite my resume. That's the easy part. Okay, delivering on that is the easy part. It's getting the customers and getting them to pay you. That's the hard part. So you test the hard part. You validate it. Okay, start with the marketing. You don't have to do pitches. You don't have to try and impress anyone. Just try to get paying customers. Okay? And if you can't, the only thing you risked was your time being wasted. And you could even argue it's not really being wasted as long as you're learning something. Many people fail in their business ideas. Many business ideas fail before people stumble upon a winning idea. And God knows that certainly was the case with me. I failed at several business ideas, but they were stepping stools along the way, steps along the way. Stepping stools? Is that a thing? Probably not. Anyway. But yeah, this is stuff that you can do. So, I got to figure out where I am in this whole talk here. So you don't need a lot of money. You can go ahead just with a computer, just with social networking, and start validating your ideas. Okay. And the idea is that you don't quit your day job on day one. Okay. If you're currently employed, if you have a day job that's paying the bills and it's tolerable for the moment, I advocate that you don't quit, okay? The only time I would ever encourage someone to quit their job is if they were making a comparable amount of money with their business idea or their business on the side, okay? And yes, technically that qualifies as a side hustle. You start this thing on the side, and if it fails, it fails. The only thing you wasted was your time. But if it succeeds, and sooner or later, if you're serious about this and you're passionate about it, it will succeed. You will get somewhere. If you continue to learn, you continue to try things, you will get somewhere. Even if it takes you, say, 5 years. Okay, it won't take you 5 years. Most people will not need 5 years of hard work to do this. It'll happen a lot quicker than that for most people. But even if it takes you 5 years, you'll get there. And at that point, you will probably figure that, I'd rather go full-time on my own business, my side hustle, than do my day job. And that way you minimize the risk. Okay. So that's how in a nutshell, that's how I would recommend people transition to doing this. Okay. I think there's a lot of fear in this for a lot of people. People think that they have to take a tremendous personal risk. I want to address, I guess, maybe one final thing, and that is another fallacy. Another fallacy is that the way to do a business, okay, and this is what you might think if you listen to a lot of startup incubators or, organizations set up to help entrepreneurs, is that it seems like they think the only way to start a company is to get massive amounts of money, spend that money on something that you've never done before, that you're kind of unsure about, that you don't really know what you're doing, but you're kind of hoping that it'll work out. And then once you get to the end and you finish creating this thing, this product or this idea that you had, then you jump and see if you can sell it and just hope that customers show up. That seems to be the myth. That seems to be the model that is pushed by a lot of startup incubators and other people. And I'm not saying that you can't do it that way. Yes, that's the Silicon Valley way. Okay, many people have done that throughout history. That's kind of the Thomas Edison way too. You spend all your money on R&D, creating this device, this thing, this invention, and then after you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this thing. You've finally not just got a prototype, but you've actually got it beyond the prototype stage to the point where you actually have a initial version that you can sell. Okay. A lot of people call that the the MVP, minimum viable product, right? Then you just hope that people will buy it. Okay. Incorrect, false, highly risky. That's not how you do things. Okay. I'm not saying it can't be done. A lot of people with money can do that, where they can absorb the risk. But for an individual to spend that kind of money developing something and then just take a leap of faith and hope that customers will magically show up, that's a very poor way of doing it. That is the model that, they always quote that statistic. I started this video with that statistic. Over 90% of business ideas or businesses fail in the first year. That's where that statistic comes from a lot of times. It comes from people who follow that model. Okay. So I do not advocate that people do that. That is the standard model that a lot of people will tell you this is how you do things. And that model also includes getting investors. And usually in the world of startups, it's kind of a crock because if you're in Silicon Valley and places like it, innovation hubs where a lot of the investment money is located there. Okay, that's kind of California, that's like Boston, those kind of places. In the United States, there's other places in the world certainly that have their sort of innovation hubs. If you're there and if in your town or your city you have venture capital firms, okay, and there's a lot of them, as well as angel investors and other institutional investors that routinely fund entrepreneur type ventures, high risk ventures. If you have a lot of that in your town, then maybe you're an innovation hub, and maybe you could do that. But everywhere else, you can't really follow that model too successfully. It's more an exception that works than it is the rule. Okay, so I'd love to get into this more. This is a topic for a whole other video. There's a lot to it. Okay, but hopefully I've given you a bit of a direction on how you can go from working a corporate type job, having a career type job, and if you have the ambition to have your own business someday where you don't have to work for someone else and you can reap the full benefits of your hard work, your innovative thinking, and your creativity, okay, which you probably can't working for an organization in a corporate type setting, a large organization, or even some mid-sized organizations too. You probably won't get that experience, okay? Hopefully you can get an idea of the general approach that will probably allow you to do this, but minimize your risk, okay? The only thing you really risk, as I said, is your time being wasted. And if it teaches you something, it might not even be completely wasted at all. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for listening this long. I know this is one of my longer videos and it's just me sort of rambling, so I'm sure it's not the most interesting thing ever, but if you're interested in this topic, let me know. I'd like to do more videos on the topic of business in general, how to succeed in a business, what success depends on, and startups in particular, startup type ventures, because I'm fascinated by this. I've spent my whole life in that kind of world. And I'd like to talk more about it. So thank you very much for your attention. You guys are awesome. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.